So this is a project, so like a short guide to writing your final year project report. Our goal is for, online. It's in the public domain from Cardiff University. Found this in my first year. Kept this under my pillow for the last 6 years that I've been in uni. So if you find a link to this, I would advise to do the same. Keep it under your pillow. It's quite useful for not just for like your dissertation, but any assignment that you're doing. It offers sort of like um a bite, not bite size like oh, easy to understand guide on how to write a master's project, but any project or any project report or anything that has to do with academic writing. I won't go through everything, so to say, but what I've done is I've highlighted certain sections or certain phrases that I think are worth noting. And um, what I've done also like on the side, so I've so in addition to this report guide, I've gone on to like open my master's project as well as this is an assignment that I did as part of my master's. One of the modules that I did, I had to do like a report. But I thought they will serve as useful examples to kind of like illustrate some of the points that I raised in the in what is it, that I raised in this short guide. So I've got my bachelor's undergrad as well as my master's assignment. I think these three will serve an example to kind of illustrate the point. Um, I think I have a term for like this was just like a or like what do you call it? Like a Word document, no Word document, Google Docs sheet that I was just dumping ideas in terms of like how I would, if I was to do my project, how I do it basically. So I probably want to do the whole thing in one sitting. So what I'll try to do is focus on the background. So pretty much when it comes to like projects, they're either in investigative or development. And typically development projects are the ones where you have to develop an artifact. And in different fields, that could be, for example, if you're doing film and design, that could be maybe a short film, or I don't know, like maybe an illustration, or if you're doing photography, that could be a photography piece, or maybe a portfolio. In computer science, that could be a software, a model, or whatever. And investigative, um, probably the ones where you have to go and you have a position or hypothesis, and then you have to find evidence to support or to disprove that hypothesis. And generally speaking, what I would say is, I think whether you pick one or the other, or whatever topic you pick, it's important that it's a topic that can stretch you, so as far as that you can learn something from doing the project, but also because it's such a journey of going from not knowing a certain topic to knowing or to become a semi expert in that domain, it is worthwhile thinking of maybe the person you want to be at the end of that journey and some of the skills that you want to learn along the way. So this is talk about finding a topic. Um, I think finding a topic is a topic in itself worth discussing in isolation. So I'm gonna just like read this but skip it to be honest. So finding a topic is essentially formulating a question or a set of questions or a hypothesis that requires research of some kind in order to provide answers to these questions or to put the statement to a test. So skipping ahead, I want to touch about so like the if I was to jump to this page. So so with the project report, I think what you need in most cases, and I found it overwhelming to kind of like start writing. And with dissertations, you have 10,000 words or 60 pages, and it feels like a lot. But when you have a structure that you follow, when you have a guideline, everything just falls in place, and it's so much easier. You're just sort of like it's almost like fill the blanks, basically. Um, so in terms of like the structure, I think that I like to follow is this one. And I've used this kind of structure for almost all my reports, tweaked it here and there, depending on or the type of report that I was doing. But basically, I start with the title and abstract. I actually write it at the end. So abstract acknowledgement table. Obviously, table of contents something that can do dynamically in Word. Word has fancy tools that allow you to do that. So I'm gonna focus on this section, introduction and background, and then probably the other part I'll do it like in two parts. Then I'll do literature review. I think in terms of like the other steps, like the methodology, implementation and results, depending on how far we get on with the first two, I think we can look into doing it as a separate video. So having said all of that, so I'm gonna read the highlighted section, but it's worth to like taking time to just read and distill some of the information. So a good report is one that presents your project work concisely and effectively. I'm a big fan of like short sentences, put a full stop, breathe, commas, and all of that. So if you can write something concisely, and nowadays we have the benefit of like tools that allow you to do that. Word has spelling grammar check and your grammar. It's easier to read and follow the logic, especially for like academic writing where it's like 60 pages. It's easier to follow the logic when your short sentences and the wording is just concise. Um, it should be organized into a logical framework. That's what we're talking about down here. You have different frameworks or structures that you can adopt, and then getting ahead. So gathering the material. So I think this is one thing that I noted to say. While sort of like working on your project, you may find it helpful to keep a notebook handy and record all the relevant information. Personally, I found it handy to have like a physical book where you actually write. Sometimes like an idea pops into your head whilst you're reading something, and you just want to note it down. But sometimes I actually did print the actual papers that I was using as like for literature review, and I would just like scribble notes on top of the paper. Um, but sometimes you may find it easier to put the ideas in a Word document such that it's you don't have to type them when you want to incorporate them into the actual document that you're typing. And what I tend to do is have two documents. The one which is like the working document and then the other one is the actual document. So in the working document, I can write all my ideas and I can then organize them in the actual document. That way I can then I don't have to like it takes more time to type the things that you feel in your actual notebook. But then conversely, it's much quicker to capture certain ideas on like a sheet of paper and then transfer them later on. So also recommend that you keep a diary of all the project related activities. Um, and this is actually a good thing so that you will have like a record of unforeseen difficulties you meet. Hopefully you must hopefully that you have resolved. Sometimes you probably don't have to have resolved them, but it's such a huge chunk of words that you can actually write about in your report about what are some of the I think most you have to do like an appraisal or some sort. Like there's a section where you do an appraisal at the end of your write up, so you can talk about some of the difficulties that you've made, as well as how you've resolved them. So like that would be like a quick short summary, but that's having that logbook with that trip of like activities allow you to just quick reference it. Whereas if you're trying to think about it off the top of your head, so like 6 months to a year down the line, that can be a bit difficult. Um, a good project will show, report will show that you are aware of relevant work with other people that you other a good project report will show that you are aware of relevant work that other people have done. Yeah, you have to use yeah, you almost have. I mean, it's self-explanatory. I don't have to explain that. Um, and then here, arranging the material and starting the project. You should consider the beginning of the project, what you need to solve, and the problem that you're struggling to address. So I think that's when like so I think that's where we started. So like this is the part where So the first thing you need to do is identify resources, and elaboration on that is you have to show that you are aware of relevant work that other people have done. Problem definition. That's where you're identifying what problem you need to solve, and or what problem you've chosen to address. So once you've got like your so once you've identified your once you have identified the resources, like typically you'd start with with defining a topic. Once you've identified your topic, you find the resources that are relevant to that topic, and then you use that to sort of like write up a problem definition. And the way you go about so a problem definition, um, or it's explained here, is sort of like where you are explaining what you basically what you're trying to solve. And this the reason why I highlight that's in green is it's quite an important point to not say your project should be to be a narrative, and I'm gonna come to that using an example. It should be telling a story, and I think when you tell a story, it's much easier to write and follow the logic. And then the other aspect, I think it's two parts. It has to be a narrative, and it has to be an argument, and especially if it's like if it is what is it? If it's an investigative one, it have to have sound arguments. And normally, it I think it's kind of like when you pick a position, you almost feel like you have to argue on one side, but because it's it's an academic what do you call it? You are trying to write a balanced argument basically. So what you're trying to do is, and you end up with so you may start with the, let's say for example, what is called like null hypothesis. You could start with say, well, this is what I'm going for. Or for example, in the case of what is it? So this one, so this was um, a research that we did with as a group exercise on the impact of parents' level of education on their children's academic performance. And so so in the null hypothesis, we were saying there is no difference in the median of the student's performance based on their parents. So basically, we're saying the parents' level of education the doesn't affect the children's the children's performance, and that but also we're saying alternatively, we're gonna say there's the parents' level of education affects the, and then based on the the data and the statistics that you would have collected, then you can do the investigation, and then at the end write up the conclusions based on what you found. Um, I keep jumping. But yeah, your written report needs to be both narrative and argumentative. Then these are the structures, and a good introduction should tell. So introduction. So introduction and the background are the ones that we're gonna sort of like just touch a little bit, and then that should be it for this one. So a good introduction should tell the reader what the project is about without assuming special knowledge and without introducing any specific material that might obscure the overview. So the introduction basically is a bird's eye view of the project, of the problem that you're trying to solve. Um, it should anticipate and combine main points described in more detail in the rest of the project. Also, it should enthuse the reader. It should read about the project to invite them to read the report. So I want to touch on the aspects of um, introducing the reader what the project is about without assuming special knowledge. So, because normally what I found in other reports that I've read from other students is when they do the introduction, they already start talking about what they're actually going to be doing. So the methodology that they're going to use, whereas you need to like take a step back and then sort of like talk about the problem at a higher level, like 10,000 feet, basically. And as an example, I'm gonna look at so my master's project was on, so my master's project was on bias and fairness in image recognition. And so I think I'm gonna break down later on, but then the point I'm gonna just jump to is this idea of um I'm look actually I'm gonna take a step back and say there are there are a couple of ways you can write or the introduction or project background, and one of the most like useful tool is the PEST model. So the PEST model is actually I jumped. So the PEST model should have come somewhere. Yeah. So you'd write an introduction to the topic. So the way you introduce your topic, there are several words. So one, you could start by so like definitions. So you could start by defining certain key terms or key terms in the topic that you've chosen, and that's what I used when I did the master's one. So I started by a definition. So if you in the field of so the goal of artificial intelligence is to create and simulate human intelligence, thus allowing them to perform the tasks that require yada yada yada. But basically, that is the definition, right? And then from that definition, they kind of expanded to say, oh, if a computer can simulate, da, 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 wait. So I use the definition and then use the part of the definition as a transition into the rest of the introduction, or as a segue to the introduction. So saying this part, that's what I use as a segue. So the goal of the of artificial intelligence is to create a computer that can simulate human intelligence, thus allowing them to perform tasks that require visual perception, speech recognition, decision making. IBM defines computer vision as a field of artificial intelligence that enables computers and systems to derive meaningful information from images, videos, and other visual inputs, and then take actions to make recommendations based on. So take actions is the one that I use to pivot my paragraph, and then say the actions and recommendations made by the help of the algorithms. So at this point, I'm just talking about so like definitions generally based on what I found online, and then also talking about some of the social. So this is where we kind of go into the after we kind of like done the definition. This is where we jump into the PEST model. So the PEST model, probably you've come across this, is political, economic, and in technology. I mean, you could add that like an extra dimension if you want sustainability. Sustain. So basically, what you could do is so talked about like using definitions, and then when you're talking about your topic, think about sort of like because we're at this point in the introduction we're defining the problem and setting up the stage to what so we're defining the problem, setting up the stage, and then our method is going to solve the problem. So basically, what I've done after the definitions, I look at what are the political issues associated with this technology. What are the socio-economic problems associated? What are the technological maybe not may not be problems, but maybe advancement or evolutions that have happened, or what's the other one? So like from a sustainability point. So you look at your topic from those 4 or 5 dimensions, and then look at what has been said about the impact of that topic or that. So in my case, looking at this piece of technology, looking at it from a political standpoint, from an economic standpoint, that's how I managed to come up with this introduction saying this is what it looks like from a bird's eye view, without going into the algorithms or specific methods that were used um, to actually that were actually used in the actual report. So if I was to pick, for example, um, the second paragraph says the actions and recommendations made with the help of algorithms have been shown to favor certain groups in society, while at the same time discriminating against other groups. So that's the problem that we're talking about, but without sort of like going into the specific methods that were or like algorithms that were used. Um, in the so like to kind of like give another example, a different example. Let me check what I did with this one. Um, so yeah, this is a different approach. Um, I think it's a similar. So like start with the definition is to say defining to like expanding on the question. So impact on price level of education, and then start with the general many factors affect. So it's almost like this was the question, then like rephrasing it, and that was the start, and then talk about the factors that affect the student performance, and this was more so from the past mode, looking at the past model, this was more the socio-economic problem. So looking at the socio-economic factors that affect parents' level of education and by proxy affect students. Um, on the so like the other way you could write so talking about like introducing the topic and defining key terms and basically when you write your definition, I think one of the approach that I would use to say, what is your understanding of the definition? Um, how is it being defined in literature? A good example is this one. For example, obviously, I know what artificial intelligence is, and based on studying artificial intelligence, but also by by virtue of being just interested in the subject domain, but actually take a step back and look at so like what is my understanding? Okay, fine, but also how is other people define the how you define the terms that you're using, right? And then look at um so which is something that you can use further in sort of like literature. So is there sort of like a universally acknowledged definition in the industry, and also what are some of the conflicting definitions, if any? This is quite useful later on in sort of like the literature review, but you can kind of like use it as well when you're building so like your project background, and then as you write from where you start from the definitions, the best model, um, you kind of start to go from the macro level and then start narrowing it down uh, until you've got to like uh, the problem that you're trying to solve and where your report or the work that you're doing comes in. And I think I've done this well in this. So like after I've explained some of the problems that have been experienced in terms of like use of AI in different parts of the world in different contexts, I then go on to say, um, and I think if you, this is my style of writing, which if I almost want to pivot or segue for the next paragraph from the previous one. So in this one, I talk about unlike the latter where so this was a comparison between DNA and fingerprints, and we're talking about uh, processing of DNA and fingerprints in an ethical manner. Uh, sorry, uh, there are laws and governing bodies that oversee the collection and processing of DNA and fingerprints in an ethical manner. Such oversight is non-existent when it comes to facial recognition technology, and then go on to say to enable such oversight, relevant bodies, machine learning models should be transparent and interpretable. Um, and then talked about all of that, and then it is therefore important to explore the method that can be used to detect and mitigate bias in machine learning. design and implementation. So that is kind of like where all of this is. So like um, boiling down to this paragraph, and then that nicely leads into also what you're going to do about it, and then project aims and objectives. Um, so yeah, this is kind of like I'm at the top. Um, I mean, this you can. I think I've tried to do a good job. Um, at least that's what I think. Um, Putting more questions than answers. I think I'd rather have more questions than answers, and then you can answer them yourself. It is better to have questions generally than to have answers. When you have questions, you find answers, or when you have answers, there's not much you can do with them. Um, what can I say? Aims and objectives. Where are we? Um, yeah. So some of the points that I was reading, what I wanted the project problem is the problem has been identified, like the stakeholders within the area, and this is what I'm talking about, like how other people have defined the project. So in my instance, for example, I think because this one is more recent, so I remember very well. So for example, Joy, I'm not gonna pronounce her name. She's such like a prominent like figure in that space. Uh, I think it's Polamin. But yeah, she's such a problem. She did a Netflix documentary on bias in facial recognition technology, and that is what inspired me to actually do this film. After watching that, it's called Coded Bias. Um, and the other one is hmm, yeah, but basically we find that she is a that Alex talking that one. So they are prominent names in that space. So you find that uh, most of my reference actually included. So likely stakeholders. So stakeholders are people affected by the technology. So in this example, I talk about um, medical field, um, um, and then talk about recruitment in recruitment. So that's kind of like the some of the examples of the different people or demographics, or if you want to put it according to this guide, the likely stakeholders within the problem, any theory associated with the problem, any constraints on approach to be adopted, existing solutions relevant to the problem. Um, yeah, so I've been my master's so like introduction covers for most of these topics, and that's kind of like I said, I've used this. This is my bread and butter when it comes to report writing. Um, I don't refer it to it as much because now I can it's kind of like ingrained in how I write. But basically, that's kind of like not quite the whistle stop tour, but that's pretty much how I would just film this back to you and just say, read this, and if it doesn't make sense, then just move on.